debate. Further debate. I recognize the member from Kitchener-Conestoga.
Yes, thank you. Well, Speaker, where do we start? You know what they're victim of actually is a Liberal government. They're the victim of a Liberal government who, frankly, has ignored them over the last 15 years. And you know what I felt was passing strange is that we're up talking about, probably the most important infrastructure project promised, and 2 of the 4 MPPs in the region are here to actually talk about it. So I think that signals the actual importance of what this means to perhaps 2 of the parties and not the other. And so I am.
I recognize the member from Ottawa South.
I think that a member is allowed to talk about any member's absence in the legislature.
Okay. So we know the rules, and please be respectful of the rules. We do not speak about anybody's attendance. Okay, I return to the member from Kitchener-Conestoga.
Okay, so I'm here proud to actually join with my colleague from Kitchener-Waterloo in calling for our area Liberal neighbour representatives and their government to quit the spin, Speaker, and finally keep their word on delivering all-day, 2-way GO rail service to and from Kitchener and Toronto. Speaker, it's now been an entire election cycle since the Premier first came down to Kitchener to make a pre-election promise, re-announcing the addition of Kitchener GO train service after having cancelled it in 2010 and committing to all-day 2-way GO. I was there, I remember. A few months later, of course, after she formed government, she stated more trains would be added immediately, adding that the full 2-way service will take a couple of years. Her then Minister of Transportation, Pembina Glenmurray, doubled down on the vote-getting gameplay but in the true spirit of Liberal stretch promises, stretched the timeline to 5 years. Since that time, Speaker, we've seen the Wynne Liberals make countless visits down to our area, speaking to the importance of talks and discussions. You know, it's too bad with all their trips to the area to trumpet their plan, they failed to notice that as the years stretched on, so did their stretch promise, leaving us with a couple extra trains here and there, as well as a few new gridlock buses, but no all-day 2-way GO, Speaker, not all-day 2-way GO. I guess we should have had a clue as to the government's lack of intention to deliver when I had the Transportation Minister in committee soon after the election. It was then that the very minister we were depending on to deliver the government's recent commitment told us that, quote, there are a lot of things, a lot of commitments that get made, that parties make, that individual MPPs make that are aspirational in nature. Aspirational? Speaker, now that's a stretch in every sense of the word. I'm left to believe that their aspirations don't amount to much because 4 years later, the boundless potential of our local tech economy continues to grind its gears as companies desperate for delivery of infrastructure promises are forced to fund their own transit initiatives just to get workers through the door. Several buses a day, Speaker. Companies locally, OpenText, Google, are putting on our roads to bring employees into the region. And while we continue to wait for this Liberal government to deliver the vital transit enhancement they promised to have up and running by 2019, our companies actually have to provide their own Toronto to Kitchener shuttle service just to keep their operations moving forward. And while we wait and wait for the delivery of long-promised transit solutions, we're forced to watch as the government wastes the money that they do spend on infrastructure. Money going down the drain, just like the Liberal all-day 2-way promises of the past election, promises that have again left us all in Waterloo region, in fact, waiting for the train. Speaker, I want to remind folks here, it took just 4 years to build the railway across Canada. 4 years, the entire thing. The fact is the Liberal Premier's record on delivery of promised enhancements for all-day 2-way GO between Kitchener and Toronto has been a continued shell game that gets her votes and seats in the House but does little in ensuring our residents get seats on the train they need. And while the Premier and her aspirational Transportation Minister continue in their charade, they pull the strings on the area parliamentary assistant, the member for Kitchener Centre, who performs their requisite dance routine around the facts, reminding us of all the work they're doing that to this day has gotten us absolutely nowhere. There was the member for Kitchener Centre back in 2015, agreeing that Kitchener trains...
As the Minister, Agriculture and Food and Rural Affairs.
A tradition in this House, when we don't look at absence of members here and dancing around the facts. I would somewhat ask the chair if they might make or the table make a ruling on that, because I know exactly what that is implying.
Okay. Okay. I already reminded the member. Order. I already reminded the members the rules of the House. You don't remind the members when they are not here. Okay. So please, you could not discuss about people's attendance. So I'll return to the member.
Well, I was just, I am quoting what a member has said, and I want to again go to the point that back in 2015, the member for Kitchener Centre said the trains need to go faster. That's what she said. At the same time as highlighting a sob story to divert attention from their undelivered promises and point to jurisdictional hurdles in their way, as if they weren't aware of those issues when they first made their commitments to, of course, garner votes. Talk is cheap, and when it comes to this government, we've been getting nothing but talk in the last few years, of course, and a whole lot about it. As if the excuses weren't enough. They also tried to slip through a timeline extension telling us all-day two-way was not 5, but actually 10 years away. Now that's talk about stretching a promise, Speaker. And there was, of course, the member again in 2016 telling us that in the 2016 budget, quote, knocked her socks off due to the series of mentions of Kitchener-Waterloo in the text. That's with the 2016 budget. As I indicated then, Speaker, I hope that the member would keep her socks on, actually, because empty words aren't bringing the trains to Kitchener any faster. Neither that budget nor the next did absolutely anything to move closer to the delivery of vital transit upgrades we were promised now 4 years ago. You'd think after 4 years they would have gotten around to the agreement with freight partners the 2016 budget said was key to delivering all-day two-way go. Now, I know the minister previously talked here about this agreement in principle, but really that's all it was, an agreement to actually continue to have talks, nothing firm. And yet, to this day, we continue to be dragged out to what the member calls very substantial announcements, only to be told that talks, of course, are ongoing. One more time, Speaker, talk is cheap, we need the trains. Which brings us to 2017. And there again was the Liberal government member right on cue in August, providing an annual update on why they failed to deliver those trains and how far they have to go. This time, they brought Metrolink staff in to join in the dance. Metrolink staff who confirmed our fears. All-day two-way under this government is more like two-way someday. Here's what they revealed in August as to the issues that need to be dealt with on the way down the track to our promised and desperately needed services. So, they need a new 30-kilometre corridor between Bramalea and Milton to bypass CN's existing track to build capacity. They need 35 new bridges for road and water crossings, including significant crossings of highways 401 and 410. They need 17 hydro towers and up to 3.4 kilometres of major gas lines to be modified and or replaced. They need 60 kilometres of new track. They need a second 52-kilometre track between Kitchener and Georgetown. They need a fourth track between Mount Pleasant and Union Station. A new tunnel under the Highway 401 to accommodate more track, of course, on the Kitchener line. And they need other system-wide upgrades for signaling and communication systems and renovations to existing GO stations. So, there's the list that we need. That's a pretty long list to check off for a project that the Liberals promised would be up and running by 2019. But that's okay, because as usual, the local member updated a 27 update provided our annual updated timeline for delivery. Now it's 7 years, Speaker, from today, not from when they thought they would originally commit to this service back in 2014. Of course, 2014, remember, there was an election, and that's when they came to town and promised to have this up and running by 2019. So now, instead of the promised trains in 2019, we're actually looking at 2024 at best. Speaker, our businesses and workers need those trains today. And the thing is, this cannot come as a surprise to the government, including the local members. Everyone else in Waterloo Region gets it. The member for Kitchener-Waterloo certainly gets it. The only people that don't seem to get it is the Liberal government. That's why I've been proud, of course, on a number of occasions to join with the member for Kitchener-Waterloo, as I am today, in united efforts to call out the Liberal government for their inability or unwillingness to deliver the transit service that they in fact promised back in 2014. I joined with her in 2015 to demand transit fairness for Waterloo Region, as it becomes clear even then that when it comes to this government meeting their transit commitments to Waterloo, we of course sit at the back of the bus. And we joined together in 2016 to write a joint letter to the Prime Minister after, in typical Liberal pre-election fashion, Mr. Trudeau ran local ads highlighting his support for investments to deliver the long-awaited two-way all-day GO service to and from Kitchener. Speaker, Liberals, whether they're provincial or federal, will say anything to get elected. Anything. Of course, once a Liberal commitment, always a Liberal commitment. And you know what we say about Liberal commitment, Speaker. Talk is cheap, and we're still waiting. I can tell you, Speaker, that the Ontario PC platform, the People's Guarantee, and I happen to have a copy here today, the People's Guarantee provides a clear commitment to move talk and finally deliver for the people of Waterloo Region, and we've heard from the Kitchener-Waterloo MPP, of course, her party's commitment as well. And so today, I am again proud to join in support of the member for Kitchener-Waterloo and move forward with her motion calling on the inclusion for all-day two-way in the government's long-term infrastructure plan, and before April 1, 2018, a firm funding commitment and a clear timeline for the delivery of frequent all-day two-way GO rail service along the full length of the Kitchener GO corridor. I'm proud to support it, Speaker, on behalf of the residents right across my riding, because you know what we're going to hear from the government side. Will roll out her usual bag of tricks highlighting the snail-paced progress and jurisdictional hurdles without once admitting that they have failed to deliver on the service they promised residents would be receiving by 2019, in what was clearly more than a vote getting exercised. Well, if they really mean it, Speaker, they can show us today. They can support the motion that's on the floor. They can move past the rhetoric and game playing and finally give us the train service we've been promised. Urgently needed all-day two-way service that our local economy and workers have waited for far too long. Thank you, Speaker.
Before